Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers! Tiki here!
And Blue Dragon 5.
And welcome to a new event that combines the best elements of two of our favorite seasons. The nostalgia of watching movies on a summer day meets the horror and B-movie scares of Hallows Eve. So grab your creepy crawlies and book a tour of the Mystery Shack. We've got a selection of offerings more offbeat than Elvis in a retirement home fighting a mummy. It'll have you screaming, "Oh my God!" Let the Summerween festivities begin. And tonight, folks, we're talking Bubba Hotep. Oh yes, oh yes. Elvis Presley and JFK in a retirement home fighting mummies, and that's not even the weirdest part about the movie. With us tonight to talk about it is one of the key contributors and founders of Hot Chocolate Media, Mr. Jacob Gulliver. How are you, Jacob?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, sure. This has been a fun season with Summerween. We've done kind of a quadrant of different things on the channel. Of course, the Troll 2 blind commentary, which I honestly was just like, I was a little too flabbergasted by that movie. I'm not sure if my reaction held up. I was mostly just like...
Yeah, the more times you watch it, the funnier it becomes. Because you start noticing all the little idiosyncrasies and the weird stuff all the background actors are doing.
Sure.
Just like... You keep hoping it makes sense, and it never does.
Then we talked through Eight-Legged Freaks. We talked through Gravity Falls, Not What He Seems. And now we're here. Now we're at the finale, Bubba Hotep. All right, so let's just go round robin and do some thesis statements about the movie. I'll start because I think out of the three of us, I have the least history with this movie. This is a movie that has always been floating around my periphery. I have no idea why it's taken me this long to see it. I just, basically, ever since we started the podcast, I always probably could have watched it whenever I wanted, but I was kind of maybe saving it for a certain, because I knew it would make a good podcast one day, so I was kind of saving it. And, yeah, watching it now, all I can say is that it's pretty damn good. I mean, it's incredibly offbeat. I love how at the start of the movie in the first act, you're just kind of like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on? Are these people actually Elvis and JFK? And then by the end of the movie, you're just like, fuck yeah, Elvis, you go avenge JFK. And you just get really wrapped up into it, you know? There's almost like an unreliable narrator quality at the start of it, but then like the more you live with these characters, it just, oh man, and I love how it takes place over the course of a single night. I love, like standalone storytelling like that. The fact that it's just a single mummy that they're dealing with is nice and not like a horde of undead. Just overall, a really well put together off-kilter film that's incredibly memorable for its weird concepts and premises that are executed well. Who wants to go next?
I'll defer to the co-host here.
Okay. All right. So Bubba Hotep. This is one of the all-star B movies. Absolutely. You know, possibly Bruce Campbell's finest performance. I actually conveyed this to him in a thank you letter I wrote when I actually saw him at the horror convention last year.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty glowing. I mean, I finished his audiobook recently, and it sounds like he actually reads the thank you letters and everything. So I feel actually better than I ever have that someone's actually read the thank you note. I got to be honest. So
yeah, that's
hopefully
really
got
cool.
my praise. But yeah, Bubba Hotep. This is a B movie with heart that legitimizes the insanity of the premise. It's one of those great last ride stories of an aging icon's second chance at life in the most unusual of circumstance. It's sort of like it's like, what if you took all the Elvis sighting stories and you forged it into this almost Dark Knight Returns-esque kind of mythic tale of mundane proportions. That's kind of the best way I could summarize Bubba Hotep. It was being the big Bruce Campbell fan that I am, it was quite the treat, and it was so much fun. I do like coming back to it. It's a great one.
I definitely first saw this when I was in high school, and like I was really into Army of Darkness at the time, but like I remember seeing a trailer on TV and just thinking like, what is this? Then, you know, a year or two after it came out, my girlfriend at the time said, "Hey, you should watch this. This is really good." And I was just like, okay, cool, we'll watch it on our date night, whatever. And like, by the end of it, exactly as Tiki said, we were both just sitting there going, yes, come on, kick its ass. You know, like, it's honestly like, it's almost an unmarketable movie. Like, it's so weird
Absolutely.
and original. There's no way to like describe this movie to somebody and have them go, yes, I would like to watch that, unless they're into weird movies.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great that we can all love weird movies together.
I mean, if you thought Up was a hard sell, I mean,
so it's just, you can't really describe it without, you know, a normie, for lack of the better term, to go, what are you talking about? Sounds stupid. But it's really this just great sort of, you know, this picture of, you know, how society treats the elderly and, you know, the infirm, you know, a little critique of that, while also being this just like very silly, enjoyable horror film as well. And they just, you know, they let the actors just go nuts with characterization, and, you know, weren't too concerned with, you know, playing it close to reality. They are allowing them to really, you know, exaggerate and play with those roles. So, yeah, definitely a very cool piece.
All right, Dragon, you got some black background and plot you want to lay on us?
Yes, I do. All right. There's not a whole lot, but it's quite interesting. It's so this was kind of the baby of Joe R. Lansdale. Now, Tiki, you might be familiar with Joe R. Lansdale. Brought him up a couple times to you. Joe R. Lansdale, he's a writer from East Texas. He's worked on Batman the Animated Series. He's written 3 episodes. He did Perchance the Dream. He did Read My Lips, and he did Showdown, which I haven't gotten to yet.
Okay.
Now, the big thing with this guy again, he wrote a short novella. It's kind of like a short novel within a series of novels that essentially are kind of these alternative history kind of Elvis books. It's kind of like an Elvis trilogy, a book series. And the second book in that trilogy, I believe the second book, was Bubba Hotep. And basically, as I said earlier, it's like, what if we took the Elvis sightings and we mixed it in with kind of the man's love of horror and westerns and mysteries and all sorts of kind of the stuff he does in his books already, Joe R. Lansdale. So he does a book. It's again, it has an interesting reception, much as you would imagine the movie would. It kind of catches the eye of the director. The filmmaker kind of takes this on, and really kind of jives with it. Don Coscarelli, I believe his name is. Don Coscarelli did these series of films called Phantasm. No, not that Phantasm, different Phantasm. Different Phantasm series of films. And this movie, I think a lot of people has quite the fan base. John dies at the end, which I haven't seen, but I hear is good. So
it's a fascinating film. It's hard to describe, similar to this movie, but there's some really, really interesting moments in it.
So the point being, you have a guy who's kind of in the same camp as Lansdale. A guy who's a little out there, but really kind of delivers on some interesting stuff, and it definitely is kind of like a fan base and kind of a built-in kind of like, okay, I like this eclectic writer and or creative person in the saddle here. So the point being, Don, he's drawn to the story. He pitches it. He wants to make it into a movie. He pitches it to both Bruce Campbell and the studio, as you'd imagine. Hard sell. Bit of a hard sell because for starters, you have elderly leads. You know, there's no plucky sidekicks. You would elderly leads. One of which is Elvis, and not just Elvis. Elvis with the delicate way of phrasing it, with cancer on his crankshaft. Kind of a hard sell to the actor, to Bruce Campbell, when he reads out in the script, so wait, he's got cancer on his what now? And then the studio's like, wait, what? So you can imagine, and then, hey, let's pitch this to Ozzie Davis, you know, really beloved actor in the black community. Let's pitch this to him. You're playing who now? So there's a lot of really out there sell. Bruce Campbell, ultimately, he was sold on it when he realized, the director was taking his proper time with it. Because, he's done a lot of movies, and of course, a lot of B movies as well. Mainly B movies. Pretty much all B movies. Spider-Man notwithstanding. Point is, he kind of comes in there and says, okay, this guy's actually, he's not going to be like a quick, 2-week shoot. Okay, put on the monster makeup, and it's going to go on the Sci-Fi Channel. None of that. No, you're going to take actual time with it. It's like a 6-week or a couple months of shoot, to figure things out, get the shots looking right. They only had $1 million budget, which basically only got like 1.2 million returns. So So basically, they made their money back on this, but just by the skin of their teeth. And basically, they wanted to do it just to make the movie. Before it was like, we got to make a huge success out of this movie. Just we really feel compelled to make this movie. Let's do it. Which is why you don't have any Elvis songs or any Elvis footage, because that would have cost half the budget.
Hmm.
So yeah, very faithful adaptation. Few additions like the flashback stuff and the scarab battle. Like that's all stuff for the movie. But again, it's like they didn't excise anything from the book. It's as faithful as it gets. And Lansdale is very happy with this 2.5 hour makeup job to make the Elvis thing happen. And they shot in an abandoned vet facility, like a war vet facility. So
yeah, it really is like a spooky place. It really doesn't, it really feels like a place where the elderly are sent to die in indignity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, they really got their money's worth out of that mill, because everything you can see on the screen, and really, it does hold up to snuff when you go back to it years later. Again, it fits with the atmosphere and everything. Yeah,
It's an incredibly self-contained set, but I feel like the self-contained quality sort of is really one of the things that sells you on it from a psychological perspective. And of course, self-containment and isolation is really one of the big factors of depression in living in a retirement home in the twilight of your life. So yeah, I think they got it down pat. All right. So, Dragon, I mean, in terms of plot, it's just like Elvis and JFK fight mummies, right? I mean, or a singular mummy.
yeah.
Like, do
Well,
we
that's
really
the
need...
singular mummy, sure. Yeah, I had kind of a little witty, kind of summation of it, but by all means, I guess we can just okay, Elvis.
No. I want to hear your witty summation. Go ahead.
Well, it's not Yates. I'm gonna give it a shot here. Okay, so basically, the movie in a nutshell, in 30 seconds, I guess. The king isn't dead, but he's in an East Texas rest home. As Elvis reflects on the life that he traded with an Elvis impersonator, Shady Rest is plagued by an ancient Egyptian king, or Hotep, if you will. Sucking the souls of the elderly residents, this motivates the aging Elvis to get out of bed and to TCB by by teaming up with the elderly African American JFK to learn more about this mummy and stop him once and for all, which leads to a fiery showdown of kings in Elvis's last ride. And that's Bubba Hotep in a nutshell.
All right. So now we just kind of go freewheeling through this movie, guys. Where do you want to start?
Well, I was going to hit one thing before we get started, just about like the Lansdale signature of kind of like the humor and stuff for the movies. I was talking about overall kind of like the things kind of bleed into the rest of the movie. Just looking at yeah.
You were kind of breaking out there. You want to repeat that?
Sure. Well, let me start here. Let me start with talking about Lansdale for a second, about kind of his style and kind of what's in the movie.
Okay.
So, for example, looking at Lansdale's his three Batman episodes, he has these themes that appear a lot in his work that seems to have definitely bled into this film. Where, one episode you have the aging icon with Showdown, you have we're legitimizing the absurd, read my lips, the whole ventriloquist thing from Batman animated series, making something really absurd work, and taking kind of like a perchance the dream thing where we're internalizing the character's struggle. So take all those elements, put them in a pot, and you kind of get the movie. We have in terms of getting our Elvis story legitimized, making him an old man, and of course is having kind of really introspective while he's kind of in the bed, just kind of thinking about life.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess starting there, let's start with the opening act. And was I the only one who got kind of like an unreliable narrator vibe at the start here? Is that intentional?
I think there absolutely is an unreliable element to it, yeah.
Because I feel like the whole sell of this movie, like I said, is the arc that it's almost the audience that goes on more of an arc that the characters do, if that makes sense, because the audience gets more and more sold on the characterization of these really outlandish depictions of these over-the-top, iconic historical figures.
Right. And in theory, you could say that it is in reality in their minds exclusively, because they're really the only ones who physically interact with the mummy. Granted, there are others that die, but their interactions with the mummy could
be natural causes. This could be a shock.
Yeah, it could be a shared hallucination, but they don't really expand on that, and I think it's more fun to think that it's true. or that it's real in the narrative.
But I do like that there's an element of doubt. I like ambiguity in film, but I like when film doesn't beat you over the head with ambiguity. I mean, this I think strikes a really good balance.
He could have just eaten the pie. We don't know. He could have just ate the pie.
Mm-hmm.
And when he walked in there, we could have done the switch, which I buy the switch. I buy that all of it happened. But then again, could have just ate the pie.
Right.
But that's the thing. I mean, a big theme. I think looking at that is, I guess, the kind of the bigger theme of the piece is like it's the theme of the elderly have lived amazing lives. In this case, we literalize her. Okay, the amazing lives in the case in point. Okay, one's Elvis, one's JFK, and one's probably the Lone Ranger looking at Kemosabe there.
Oh God.
But again, it's like that's such kind of an interesting way of kind of approaching your film. Where like, yeah, we're going.
I just love the fact that we have a Lone Ranger character to begin with in this thing. Like, that's just another element of like the '50s iconography that really cements itself within the weird surrealism of this piece.
Yeah. That's the thing with the surrealism too. I love that we have that bleak humor style here. There's definitely a dark comedy kind of a brew in here, but it's more bleak than just dark because it's like we have like kind of this sad depiction of a retirement home.
Uh-huh.
Like we have like the running gag with the morticians when they come in there and they're like moving the body, and it's like Dan Roebuck cracking funnies while like they're dropping bodies. Like, okay, no one saw it. Get rid of the thing. And like we should spray the inside.
Yeah.
And then we have these fun misdirects too. Like we have like the girl in Act 1. We have like Callie, I think her name is. You have the girl who's like Bull's daughter. Like the roommate who died. Mm-hmm. She comes in a studio, as Bruce Campbell's kind of pointed, like a studio would look at this like, oh yeah, she's gonna be the plucky sidekick. Wrong. Red herring. Doesn't happen at all, No plucky sidekicks here.
And then, so getting to JFK, I mean, that is just a whole other can of worms, man. I mean, I don't even know where to dip my toe into that.
So Ozzie Davis, he's kind of the A star in the whole piece. Nothing against Bruce Campbell. In my heart, he's always going to be the A star. But like I'm saying, looking at the piece, here's Ozzie Davis. He is like, he's from Do the Right Thing. He was the mayor in Do the Right Thing. He was like there was a number of things you can pull from. He delivered Malcolm X's eulogy. He was Dr. Doolittle's father back when Dr. Doolittle was a positive film before it now becomes a joke. So Ozzy. So what he does is JFK here. I love the conspiracy cell of his story, where we've already legitimized, at least taken a stab at legitimizing, Sebastian Haft's story, the whole switcheroo there, and then we get this other story just told to us. Like we don't get to see it, but we basically we get a view from the outside what Sebastian Haft's story must look like to other people through the JFK thing, whereas he has the conspiracy that he had brain surgery to save his life, but then he was dyed a different color and had a sandbag put into his head, and he was put in a restroom home.
Yeah, the sandbag in his head is so brilliant. It's just like that. It's so unbelievable as like a possibility, but he's so convinced of it, and like.
And then, like I said, throughout the movie, it's more subtle than Elvis for sure. Yeah. But throughout the movie, like, goddamn, this guy is legitimately presidential in a good way. Like
he sells you one of two possibilities, and both are perfectly fine. I'll take both of them even. Okay, one is that we have the measured reality to Elvis, where we're okay by comparison. This guy seemingly obviously crazy, but his acting sells that one of two things. One, you either believe him, like I think most of us do, or you invest in a man living a delusion that is his only hope at living a life, which again is the other way it takes Sebastian Haft, where this is the only thing that gives him purpose. Otherwise, he's just a shell of a guy sitting there again who has no idea who he is. But again, being Elvis or having this switcheroo life is all that he has.
Yeah.
One other thing with JFK, I love his room. I think his room is my favorite set in the whole piece. He has the nicest room in that place. It has like the nice presidential bed. He's got all the conspiracy stuff around him. He's got like a really nice bathroom.
Photographs of everybody on the walls, and like when you go in the first time, there's that fast edit with all the gunshots.
Oh yeah,
like the pictures and stuff.
And like the idea is he was a conspiracy theorist who then just kind of went down the rabbit hole and he never found himself. That's kind of like what that would be the same person's interpretation of this man is. Oh, he's one of those big JFK conspiracy buffs who thinks all this happened. Also, I love he has baby Ruths in his drawer, his big presidential.
That was one of my favorite scenes in the whole thing. Is Elvis just being so impressed with the baby Ruth. Give me a baby Ruth, man.
And of course, my favorite thing about I love the whole relationship.
Let's get decadent.
Oh god. So my favorite thing about all this too is that yet again Elvis has befriended another president in a sense, which is even
Yeah.
better. First Nixon, now JFK. That's wonderful.
Oh God.
But speaking of Elvis, I think that my favorite scene in the whole film, I think one of the big standout scenes is that flashback scene. Is the pie scene. I mean, it's the best scene in one. We see the house, and we see how this all is believably feasible. Like if you were going to say, okay, well, he goes. But it's so mythic at the same time, it's hard to believe. Like Elvis in real life, he did get kind of fed up, and he voiced this to people, especially as members of his, the quote unquote Memphis Mafia, his pals, Elvis's buddies. He did get fed up with the iconic status and becoming a thing. I mean, he always like I put these things on, I just become a thing, like I become an icon, become Coca-Cola,
right.
quote Michael Shannon performance. He's basically, but I love that he uses the iconography of the Elvis impersonator and everything as an escapist motive behind Sebastian Haff. He uses, he uses his iconic status as the escape route, which is genius.
And he can still live the life that he wants, just on a smaller scale.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then by the end, it's like we go through this whole arc of him being like incredibly self-reflective, which is honestly just really poetic, like just the inner monologues about, the twilight of one's life and, the things that you've accomplished and haven't accomplished and can never accomplish. I mean, it really is deep, thought-provoking stuff. Yeah. But then you get to the end and he's full on embracing the rhinestones of it all. And it's just, it's a great, it's legitimately like great transformation from, the downtrodden retired Elvis into like the return of the king.
Yeah. And that's like the
Go ahead.
No, please go on. Go on.
I was just gonna say, like, when they both come out in like the, Ozzie Davis has the nice suit and Bruce has the that the bright, pure white Elvis does.
That's an actual Elvis suit, by the way.
Is it really? That's awesome.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing. So all the Elvis suits that you see, I mean, maybe some of them have technically been worn by Elvis, but only one company makes the Elvis jumpsuits, and Elvis never kept them. They usually got returned unless anything ended up in Graceland, I guess. But the point is, he only got his suits from one place, and those guys made them for the movie. So the point being, they're all technically like every professional Elvis impersonator that's actually getting the jumpsuit from that place, they're all Elvis jumpsuits. And they sweats into high heaven. So there are not good stories about those Elvis jumpsuits.
Oh God.
Sure. Yeah. But the when they both come out, like it's clear, like if they're gonna go out, they're gonna go out looking their best. And like I think that's just they don't say that outright, but it's just such a powerful statement of like, we're reclaiming our legacy, we're reclaiming our our dignity.
Sure.
It's a really great, swell leading up to that final act.
Do you want
to talk about the Mummy?
Sure, yeah, let's talk about the Mummy. So yes, the Mummy is kind of a perfect symbol and a metaphor for the struggle of old age, because the mummies are classically the aged monster, which is just perfect, and of course another aged king. Much like, again, I love how he parallels Elvis perfectly, that the mummy is an aged king without ceremony, because he's like a disgraced mummy. That's the whole thing with Bubba. Because, he's just a walking dead man. He's not a pharaoh like he used to be in his heyday, and he's just trying to stay alive within the rest home, in his case, by sucking souls.
God, I love how outlandish it all is.
Yeah.
And he speaks in hieroglyphics, which is just fun.
The hieroglyphic talk is fucking amazing, especially eat my Anubis dog dick asshole.
Yeah.
That's like the one element of the movie that just really purely gets into B-movie campiness.
Oh, yeah. But again, it's a believable foe that an aged Elvis could take on, though. It makes sense. Of all the monsters, like, Frankenstein, Elvis is toast. I don't care what you say. Elvis is toast going up against Frankenstein. But the mummy is kind of like, let's face it, the old toilet paper mummy joke. This guy ain't no toilet paper mummy, but you see what I'm saying, though. Yeah. It's like, if Elvis is going to have a chance against any classic monster, would be a mummy.
The makeup job on the Mummy is really good. And like I said, I love the fact that so many horror movies, it's just like, either the threat is like way too overpowered, or in the case of like something like The Conjuring 2, it's like there's one really good threat and then one cheesy threat. But with this, it's like it's so standalone, it's so metaphorical. And the design work on it is really simple but memorable at the same time. It works so well in terms of, I feel like this movie is like one of the ultimate kind of like bottle episodes in terms of horror movies, because really it takes place within one night in one setting with two characters fighting one monster. It's so standalone, and I love that about it.
Yeah, it's got a perfect three-act structure. I love the three-act structure in this film, where it's very simple. Like, I love that they kind of mock it in, like, when they talk about the movie too. It's like, so like Act One ends with Elvis getting out of bed for the first time. And again, I know he talks with Jack for the one scene, but then again, that could have been like a cutaway. We don't know when that happened, to be honest.
Yeah.
Point being, Elvis gets out of bed to fight the scarab. That's the end of Act One. He's kind of living again. Act Two is the mystery of the mummy, and Act Three is the showdown. Quite simple, very straightforward. And I love that in facing off against the mummy, it's sort of like, again, Elvis, to reclaim his youth, has to take down the mummy, which obviously there's no going back. There's no way he's reclaiming his youth in a sense. But again, it's like internally he reclaims his youth and like going out on his own terms. So that's kind of the big takeaway there.
Yeah. And he gets the "all is well" in hieroglyphics in the sky.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, man. Of course, he ends like Elvis's last words in the movie being, thank you very much. Like, that's perfect. They earned that so much. It wasn't just using it like. But I want to pull in the thread of Bruce Campbell's performance here, because again, it's one of the great things about this movie. I think one of Bruce Campbell's finest performances. He does really great in Ash vs. Evil Dead. Don't get me wrong, like the new series especially. But his performance here, it's like, unfortunately, being the B movie famous Bruce Campbell, many a times the idea is like Bruce Campbell, he can't get. Very rarely will he ever get a leading role, especially in an A movie. Like, rarely does he do the leading role. But here, it's like the only way he's going to be able to play Elvis in a movie would be through an unconventional B movie version of Elvis, and Elvis unlike any other, which he does here.
Yeah.
Again, Elvis with a cancerous growth, So, but again, that's what I'm saying. I love that he plays unglamorized. He plays an unglamorized and raw Elvis, without the zeal, without the energy, without the charm. Like he'll mention like a peanut butter banana sandwich, but he doesn't have quite the same kind of like it's not quite the same thing. It's like it's this logical what if. Like, what if we explored Elvis surviving past his expiration date, which is a fascinating idea. And like now he's questioning the normal life that he traded. Was it worth it? Like, did I really want this? Like, basically, in the end, you look at Elvis, how famously Elvis, he's kind of like a testament to, like many celebrities when they die, he's kind of a testament, gone too soon. The fragility of life. He was just taken out of left field there, versus like an actual death, or he's just kind of lying in wait, forced to reflect on like what it means, which is such the counter opposite to how Elvis actually died, and that's so fascinating. It's like, instead of just being plucked out, what if you just really had to think about, like, the way you lived, you're kind of going to die right now. How do you feel about that? It's really interesting.
Right. All right. I mean, this movie is like so self-contained. I feel like we've already hit a lot of the major beats, guys. Anything else we need to go through?
Let's talk about the filmmaking of it all here. Let's talk about talk a little bit the mummy's makeup. It's a guy in a suit. Of course, he actually lit on fire, which is pretty cool.
And we praise the set design.
We have, again, shooting in real location. Again, but it's basically one isolated location. They also shot the flashbacks in the same location, by the way. It's all in one spot. And a kiddie pool. They shot the bumper in the kiddie pool. They put like gunk and mud and stuff in there, but it's all anyway. But yeah, the directing, I love. Again, they're making amazing use of a low budget with all these clever techniques that we're talking about, like with stuff like that. Think about it. We're obscuring Bubba with really creative lighting. When he walks down the hallway, we're covering up the imperfections and the rubber of it all with like the light, like the really cool spiraling light. I don't know if it's spiraling, the spinning light effect.
Yep.
He's walking. We're actually lighting him on fire. We're doing stuff like again, even though we can't use any music or footage of Elvis, he plays a concert. He gets a crowd, and like it's on TV. But again, you'll notice if you really look at that, like he never turns his head. It's like always a guy with like an Elvis haircut. We never see him. That scarab battle. The scarab battle he has at the end of Act One. It feels so Evil Dead like in a fun way, where it just hits the mark of of adventure within the mundane absurdity. Where again, like him fighting that flying scarab is like Ash in the cabin, just like fighting like his hand or something. It's just like Bruce Campbell's having a lot of fun.
I love the moment where he puts it on the wall with the bedpan, and then he takes it off and is like looking around, and we can see it inside the bedpan. Just like,
you don't have
that's
never
so well written.
Yeah. The shots the crap out of him with the heater.
Right. Yeah. In terms of like directing and performances, I definitely want to give a shout out to two minor roles. One, the nurse in the facility, just like the totally like the very much what I call the customer service voice, that like perfect level
Just the
of
half,
like
we gotta do that thing.
Yeah. Just like, she's clearly doing what she can to take care of people and stuff, but she also knows that like this is an aggravating aspect of life, and the people that she's working with don't really want her to do the work she's doing as well. So like that performance I think is really strong. The other one that I want to call out is the the little old lady who gets murdered right before the scarab battle. Like when we discover the scarab, she like goes to the lady in the iron lung.
Yeah, and steals her glasses.
And steals her glasses, just like clearly, just like this,
And steals the cookies
from the. And steals the cookies, just like I don't know, like I feel like I couldn't do that with like the same level of like seriousness that actor does.
What do you want, cockroach?
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah. So very, very convincing, but also just like fun characterizations.
Absolutely. I love the so another thing within the filmmaking too is again the way they did the makeup and everything on Bruce Campbell for the Sebastian hat, but we see him as young Elvis, which also looks pretty good and pretty convincing. One of my favorite scenes, again, going back to the flashback with the performance and the makeup, I love that we have this scene where we have the interaction between Sebastian and the real Elvis, where again it's obviously the same actor, but again he plays it so differently. And again, it's so just like you have like just kind of the man prostrating himself in front of his idol, just eating his pie. And, oh my God, the Mecca just walked in. He kisses the ring and everything. You have kind of like Elvis Circle, like Elvis. Literally wearing the same suit when he met Nixon, by the way.
Yeah.
Which is great. As meeting and making the impression and everything, but again, like the makeup as well as with the older Elvis, obviously more impressive because they're adding like the fat suit on him. What they're doing is they're lighting him like a star is the way they kind of put it. But I think they're backlighting, or maybe not backlighting. The point being they're lighting him from certain angles to also hide any imperfections in the makeup. They're shooting on a grainy stock of footage to kind of cover themselves. This is shot in 2002, so they're doing that intentionally. It's not just like by happenstance. It looks kind of like a '90s movie, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah. But I mean, that's mostly just because a lot of studios were shooting digital at that point, and they're kind of a holdout for the film stock.
Yeah.
After Star Wars, everybody was just like, "Oh shit, we better start shooting digital."
Sure. Wait, let's see. Yeah, go on.
Oh no, go ahead.
Right. Also, like little things like JFK's wheelchair and how it comes into the battle. I love that everything's just perfectly set up and paid off. Like the full circle. Think about how full circle our big
very efficient screenplay writing right there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So think like the mummy's arrival, the location where we learn the mummy arrived is kind of the end of the hill with the water and everything. Is like where he arrived is where the whole thing ends. Very appropriately. Elvis is on his back like a turtle, but not helpless this time. Again, much like he was at the start of the movie, on his back. He ends the movie on his back, but on his own terms. And that's what I'm saying. Just everything is just so well worked out, well defined, as well as the arc of Elvis, where these acts of absurdity bring Elvis's mojo back, both literally and physiologically. Let's say. And Bruce Campbell again, he's just adding. He's like the fun's coming back in the performance. Like we have Elvis putting on a safari jacket, going like a little Hardy Boys mystery. Like he and JFK are doing like this little elderly help Hardy Boys mystery, which is fantastic. And it's like, but while we're doing this fun stuff, we're digging in kind of the dramatic points. Like there's two really powerful scenes. One completely absurd, like the red phone scene where Elvis. He makes a decision, we're going to take out the mummy. Where basically, JFK did the research so they can protect themselves from the mummy. He had no idea we're going to take out the mummy because that's crazy. But Elvis calls him up, and basically he quotes his speech to him. He quotes like, "Mr. President, asking not what your retirement home can do for you, but what you can do for your retirement home."
Oh God.
And then once they're suited up before they go on the last ride, as it were, before they go down the face-off against the mummy, yeah.
JFK has the red phone as well.
Yeah.
Like the Situation Room phone.
That's what I'm saying. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's so good.
And that's what I'm saying. So like we have that the payoff though, like right before they go off in the battle, where they then have a really personal scene together, where it's like they show each other. Elvis shows JFK the picture of his daughter, a picture of Lisa Marie, and he says, and JFK offers a really nice piece of wisdom. Says, "We did the best we did the best we could as fathers, all considering, considering the circumstances," which is a really tender scene where they can't dwell on their, like they did in Act One, they can't dwell on their failings as people and like their regrets and like like Elvis in potentially faking his death and everything, he kind of left his daughter in the lurch, and we saw what craziness she got into in the later years. So it's feeling a little guilty. I'm sure in places there, but yeah, it all just comes to this perfect kind of Act 3 conclusion there, which JFK's passing and the wheelchair is then available again. JFK kind of assists Elvis in taking out the bad guy in that regard, and it's all just it's just all really wonderful, I guess.
Yeah. All right. I mean, shoot, guys, this is just, like I said, a really self-contained movie. I think we've pretty much hit everything, honestly. I think we did a really good, efficient job at this. Dragon, anything else you want to add?
Well, I mean, just so I can make sure I got it in there, like the last note I could say to it is like, again, I just love that it's such a really nice idea that at the end of the day, the big takeaway of the story is it's a hero going out on his own terms. We have the static Elvis character who's gone proactive through the course of the film, accepting the semblance of life that he has, and we gave Elvis a chance to choose how he dies. That's what I think makes the ending powerful. He's given a choice, but basically versus just being cut off by fate, which is just kind of like how it actually has happened in the history books, as it were. So it's just all it's my soul's still mine is what he says. Like the journey, this whole journey about keeping his own soul, about to find making these choices about defining like how he goes. He's not part of a celebrity machine. He's making his own choices. He's not being misled by a Colonel Tom Parker or anything. It's like, I'm choosing how I'm going out. Yeah, I mean the film is simply a testament to give the right people a camera, even with a minimal budget. You're going to see what amazing things they can do, and they can make the most ridiculous things work if you really apply yourselves. You treat the process seriously, but not too seriously.
All right.
I have one more thing I wanted to do with you guys.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So we didn't talk about this in advance, so I'm going to spring it on you, but I think it'll be fun.
Okay.
Let's take the core concept of this movie with like the two celebrities who died before their time, recast as old people, versus a famous movie monster. And who would you put in it? And what monster would they battle?
Okay, so gone before their time, right?
Yeah, but I mean, ideally, people whose lives would line up. You can set it whenever you want, so it doesn't matter specifically. But I'm just curious what you would say.
Well, I know it's going to be Frankenstein. I just can't think of. Just trying to think of the actors. Oh God.
I would have to say one of them would be Walt Disney for me. And honestly, as far as an actor goes, I'm sorry. I'm so committed to Ryan Gosling playing whatever era Walt Disney he wants to, whether it be like an old man makeup or whatever, that I think Ryan Gosling is old man Walt Disney. I know it's unconventional, but that's kind of the point of the question. Like kind of go the opposite route with the casting a little bit. And then who would Walt Disney play off of? My gut instinct is someone like James Dean, kind of like a young, hot-headed guy versus like a guy who's really set in his ways. It'd almost be kind of like a father-son story almost. Or maybe like in terms of retirement home, almost a Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. With James Dean being the Barnacle Boy. As far as an older James Dean, Huh. I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe someone like a I don't know, dragon.
Well, I'm dying here in terms of thinking things. Right now, I'm thinking of Phil Hartman. I'm just trying to think how that would work.
Yeah.
And my monster would
You don't
probably
have to play. It's just a
my
fun
monster
little.
would be a giant tarantula, just because.
Yeah.
Just because I'm kind
Throwback
of
to eight-legged freaks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just because I feel like a giant tarantula very much like if James Dean lived past, when he died, he probably would have starred in some of those cheesy 50s B movies.
Well, there is an idea. I'm not sure. Like again, I'm having trouble thinking of a pairing, but I'm thinking maybe like someone playing Robert Shaw versus the creature from the Black Lagoon, maybe.
Oh God. Gulliver, what would you do?
If I can set it in the future so that it would make sense with like more recent stuff, I think it would be Chester Bennington and Chris Cornell, who, and then they would both be like, trying to reclaim their like rock legacies in that one, and then they would fight like a rock monster to like hammer home that sort of like joke a little bit.
So
But if it was like earlier, I'm trying to think who else would be like a good choice. You could do like a Kurt Cobain or like a Jimi Hendrix would be really cool to see like an elderly version of in a retirement home. Or like blanking on names.
This is how it feels.
Like
Oh,
Chris
you know
Farley,
what?
or
Maybe Ricardo Montalban.
Oh, that would be cool.
I
Yeah.
love Ricardo Montalban. That'd be one I'd
But
go
he
to
would.
there.
The thing about Ricardo though, like he would be unmistakable. Like if he said no, I switched places with somebody, just be like, yeah, you're right. My bad. Sorry, Ricardo. Can I take you somewhere? Just like he's so iconic. Like
we're going with like
Elvis works so much. It's like there's 1,000 people impersonating him.
Right.
Nobody can do Ricardo.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to get like I don't know, like these two, the loss of these two is still kind of fresh, but Heath Ledger and Anton Yelchin or something like that, like two really iconic actors that died like way before their time. And
well, Farley has a brother who looks and sounds just like him.
Okay. All right. Anyways, guys, I think we should probably wrap this up. Right. Get it. Mummies.
Yep.
All right. Any other? I feel like we pretty much conveyed the final thoughts pretty well. I don't really have much else to add.
Okay.
Dragon?
Again, just it's a lot of love for this. Again, it's it's proof you can make most outlandish things stick just really well. It's again, I love, seriously, one of my favorite Bruce Campbell performances. It's like I think the high point of what a B movie should be. I can't say enough nice things about it. It's perfectly plotted and everything. It's phenomenal.
Phenomenal. Well, folks, the trick-or-treat candy is run dry and back to school is right around the corner. It's time to wash off the sunscreen and pack away the fake blood. Be sure to check back next season to find out what else is in store in this fine and fiendish Summerween. Thank you. Thank you very much.
DC